he's just a very smart, instinctive football player where no matter what he's tasked with, he executes his assignments. He's always in good positions, but it's the trigger and how he's tackling right now that really has me impressed. And he's not a super big guy. He might be 5'10", 185 pounds, something like that, but a versatile defensive back that's smart in tackles. Those are really good boxes to check.
What's going on, everybody? The Draft Network Scouting Department checking in with another check-in of our latest 2023 TDN 100 prospect rankings for the 2023 NFL Draft, looking at all of the best prospects eligible. And we're going to be looking at players that are quickly rising up the ballots through the first couple of weeks of the season. The number one question I want to hear from each one of you guys here is, who is the player who has most grabbed your attention as a riser throughout the ranks? Some of our biggest risers from the first edition of TDN 100 to this latest edition include tight end Darnell Washington from Georgia, KJ Henry from Clemson, Brandon Joseph, the safety from Notre Dame, a couple more Georgia Bulldogs and Christopher Smith, Broderick Jones, wide receiver Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, and Joey Porter Jr., the corner from Penn State. Those are our top risers throughout the TDN 100. But open question, Dave, I'm going to start with you. Who is the name when you look at the risers, whether it's that top tier or somebody else who you're most impressed with your own personal perspective on this class?
Well, it's one of the guys that I scouted this summer, and it was Broderick Jones, the left tackle from Georgia. He's been a stonewall for this offense, and everybody talks about all the production that they've seen from the offense in the passing game with Stetson Bennett, but a big part of that is this offensive line. And looking at the numbers, Broderick Jones has only given up one hurry and one pressure all season, and he's played 3 games. And then, watching him, against Oregon, like the movement skills, the length, the power on contact, all the things and tools that he brings. And then he just looks a little more refined to me so far this season, guys. So to me, just to see his name rise up the ranks, I was really happy to see it.
Keith, I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, I'm going to steal a guy from Joe's area, so hopefully he doesn't get too mad with me. I got to go with wide receiver from Tennessee, Cedric Tillman. I put Joe put his head down. I put eyes on this guy for the Pittsburgh game, man. He just made plays. And he's a physically impressive wide receiver. He looks to be 6'2", 210, 220 pounds. And he's a guy that can take the top off of defense, but then also he has that good physique to where he can work all the short to intermediate routes also. So, man, just looking at him from a size perspective and also a speed perspective, I'm looking at it like, hey, if I'm a NFL franchise, early day 2, can I draft this guy and he can possibly turn into a number 1 type wide receiver profile for me? I really enjoyed watching him.
Joseph.
Well, listen, if I would have went first, I would have went with Broderick Jones. If I would have went second, I would have went with Cedric Tillman.
Well, then here, let me jump in with mine too, in the event that I can quick snap you for.
Here we go.
Who you got for us?
I'm gonna go Christopher Smith, the safety from Georgia. We mentioned a lot of Georgia Bulldogs among the risers, and Christopher Smith is one of those guys that falls right in line there, where you watch this Georgia defense, and there's a lot of really, really good players, but Christopher Smith has really stood out to me for a number of reasons. First of all, his versatility. They play him in a lot of different spots, including deep alignments in the slot, sometimes closer to the line of scrimmage as well. And he's just a very smart, instinctive football player where no matter what he's tasked with, he executes his assignments. He's always in good positions, but it's the trigger and how he's tackling right now that really has me impressed. And he's not a super big guy. He might be 5'10", 185 pounds, something like that, but a versatile defensive back that's smart in tackles. Those are really good boxes to check. And so as I think about players that just really stood out to me throughout the course of this process early on, and then seeing how that has impacted our board, Christopher Smith really does stand out.
Well, turnabout's fair play, Joe, because I was ready to talk about tight end Darnell Washington from Georgia, but we got to have a little bit more variety than a bunch of Georgia Bulldogs. So instead, I'll go a little bit deeper down the board for a riser of 10 spots from the first edition to the second, making an arrival in the top 32 prospects. That's Florida interior defensive lineman Gervon Dexter, who has been very impressive in stretches. And I know he was a player who was a little polarizing for us coming into the season because you saw the flashes, you saw the potential, you saw the build. And the question was, okay, how much more disruptive and consistent can he be? And you see Dexter on a weekly basis for the Florida Gators making a lot of impact plays and being that disruptive interior presence. That's really hard to miss. And so I want to shout him out as far as being someone who really has done well for themselves in the course of this growth. But how about another Florida Gator as well? How about Brenton Cox, the edge rusher? This was a player who our process we really liked early on last year. And then it turns out the season didn't quite materialize the way that you hoped it would. And now we are seeing Brenton Cox fulfill the potential that we thought that he had last year. Anybody have any thoughts on Brenton Cox?
Yeah, I think it's more of finishing, right? And I know, Joe, he was in your region last year, and I would like him to call Brenton Cox. He would fall in that category of a almost player, right? Where they have tons of pressures and a couple almost sacks, but I think this year he's showing the ability to simply finish the play. And I don't know if that's because he lost weight and, he's a little bit quicker now and able to finish, or if it's just, playing with better effort and motor with a new coaching staff. So I think with Brenton Cox, what I've seen early on is like, you know what, he's actually converting those pressures and those hurries to actual sacks and just being, disruptive as an edge rusher.
Joe, I wanted to ask you about Zay Flowers from Boston College, another riser and another player that's been on our radar for the past couple of seasons. But lo and behold, now he's making his way pretty consistently into the fringe of a second-round valuation. A lot of grades in the 60s and 70s on individual ballots, and that places him at 72nd overall. And he's up over 40 spots from the first edition of the TDN 100.
Yeah, I think with Zay Flowers, the appreciation that I've gained for him is just how dynamic he can be in tight areas and how much space he can create for himself as a route runner and with the ball in his hands. And you go back a couple of years and he had the big season with Phil Dracovic at Boston College, and you liked a lot of that, but I kind of had some questions about, okay, what type of ability does he have to play bigger than he does for a smaller receiver? And then last year, injuries at the quarterback position, and they just didn't prioritize getting him the ball enough, and so he faded a little bit. But back early this year, they're getting him involved. That was a big point of emphasis from Coach Heffley, DP, and I heard him talk about that at ACC kickoff, and they're getting him the football, and you're seeing that playmaking potential. And guys that can create space for themselves as a route runner and as a guy with the ball in his hands, those guys make plays in the NFL. That translates, and there's some really exciting elusiveness and creativity that comes with Zay Flowers. And so I think it's just becoming easier to buy in as the sample size grows and he becomes regains himself as a bigger part of that Boston College offense.
Damian, I'll come to you for one more name. Give somebody some love who needs it.
Man, I'm going to stick with Georgia a little bit. And I want to talk about Cedric Van Pran, the center. I'm all about the trenches today. It's the running back in me, guys. I can't help it. So, like, Cedric Van Pran, physical, tough, athletic, high football IQ, good in pass pro, good in the run game. Like I said, he's the quarterback of that offensive line, and being able to keep, my saying, keep the quarterback's lap clean. Lay that napkin down, keep him clean in the pocket, and he does a great job of that. He hasn't been surrendering much vertical push when guys are trying to bull rush him and overpower him. He's showing that power to anchor quickly and really move guys and then get up to the second level, show that athleticism. I've loved everything I've seen from both Georgia Bulldogs, Broderick Jones, and Cedric Van Pran, who is at center.
And I'll keep things in the SEC with the last name that I'll bring to the table. This isn't a huge riser, but he's a riser for me individually. And he's up 8 spots in total, and it's Derick Hall, the edge from Auburn. Keith, give me a little grief already talking about being an edge guy when we were in the pre-recording, and sure enough, I'm busted here. At least I'm not talking about KJ Henry, though, who's another one of my guys. But Derick Hall physically looks the part, man, and I understand that Auburn really got it handed to him by Penn State when they played in that clash of powerhouse programs. But Derick Hall himself as a player, looking at his build and the way he moves and the force in which he can apply to opposing players as both a tackler and when he's attacking and winning at the line of scrimmage at the point of attack, it's really jumped out to me throughout the early portion of this season. And that makes Derick Hall somebody for me who's I love a good pass rusher, right? He's certainly on the radar and moving up in the right direction. He's breaking into my top 45. And I'm lowest on him out of the group here. Everybody else seems to have gotten the memo. Joe, 36th. Keith, 37th. Dame, 29th. So don't mind me, guys. I'm just a little late to the party, but Derick Hall is grabbing my attention big time early on here to start this season. We got plenty of football left, which means you're going to want to hit subscribe. Future iterations of the TDN 100. Thanks for checking out this video. Make sure to visit thedraftnetwork.com to see the full list for this month's TDN 100 top prospects.